Imagine an America completely wiped off the map, replaced not by some grand, invincible Southern empire, but by, well, something entirely different. A bankrupt, collapsing nightmare. You see, the history we all know is just this fragile tapestry, right? We often see popular fiction painting this picture of a permanent, superpower confederacy. But when we actually look at the structural doom hiding just beneath the surface, a much darker reality emerges. So, in the realm of speculative history, few questions haunt us quite like this one. What if the South actually won the American Civil War? To find the real answer, we've got to look past the military fantasies and stare straight at the cold, hard economic data. Because at the end of the day, economics dictate whether nations survive or perish. Picture this. It's a chilly autumn morning in the mid-1860s. Diplomats are sitting down in a neutral European city signing a treaty that recognizes a completely fractured America. For a brief, fleeting moment, there's absolute triumph in the streets of Richmond and Charleston. But as soon as those celebratory cannons fade, a really harsh geographic reality sets in. On one side, you've got the United States to the north. Sure, they're humiliated by the loss, absolutely, but they are deeply, deeply industrialized. And on the other side, the new Southern Republic. The North enters this period of quiet, bitter resentment, basically watching its southern neighbor with cold, unyielding vigilance. What we're looking at here is essentially the world's first 19th century Cold War. The Mason-Dixon Line isn't just a cultural boundary anymore. It transforms into a heavily militarized international border. We're talking bristling with fortresses patrolled by thousands of wary soldiers. It is a wildly fragile keys where literally a single misstep could reignite the slaughter. But here's what's really fascinating about all this. The greatest threat to this newly independent South wouldn't actually come from across that northern border. No, it would come from the global marketplace. The unforgiving currents of the Industrial Revolution were about to hit, and trust me, they were going to hit hard. You have to remember, the Confederacy was built entirely on a single, super fragile economic pillar: cotton. The whole assumption was that European factories would always just bow down to King Cotton. But if history teaches us anything, it's that empires absolutely hate being dependent. During the war, Great Britain and France were aggressively developing alternative supply lines, shifting their focus over to Egypt and India. So by the time the independent South tries to integrate into the global economy, the world has already moved on. Cotton prices absolutely plummet. It's a free fall. This newly independent nation finds its primary source of wealth evaporating almost overnight. Quick aside, if you're enjoying this explainer and finding this deep dive into hidden histories valuable, go ahead and hit that like button and share it right now. It really helps tell the algorithm to share this with more focused learners just like you. Anyway, with the cotton market collapsing, the Southern economy just completely stagnates. They have no modern factories, no centralized banks, and zero diverse infrastructure. And this leads us to a massive structural shift. The institution of forced labor, which had been the engine of their agrarian wealth, suddenly becomes a huge economic liability. The rest of the world is rapidly transitioning toward automated industrialization. This makes the whole agrarian model completely obsolete and, frankly, economically unsustainable in the modern era. Compounding all this economic isolation is what we can call the states' rights paradox. Remember, this was a nation born out of an absolute obsession with states' rights. So, a fatal political flaw was woven directly into their constitution. Their central government was practically powerless by design. They literally built a house without a foundation, which is, a pretty bold architectural choice when a massive storm is rolling in. And this quickly builds into total internal cannibalization. When Richmond frantically tries to collect national taxes to pay off their staggering war debts, or, say, tries to build a unified rail system, individual states just slam the door in their face. You've got governors furiously arguing that federal overreach is exactly what they just fought a bloody war to escape. So, without any tax revenue, there is only one desperate option left: print money. The printing presses are just running nonstop. And as you might expect, this triggers a runaway hyperinflation crisis that turns banknotes into worthless scrap paper. The entire political and financial system literally starts cannibalizing itself from within. And think about the army. Without money to pay soldiers, the military completely devolves. The national army rapidly dissolves, fracturing into these localized militias that are loyal only to their own state borders. The central government basically ceases to function, leaving behind this bickering coalition of semi-independent territories teetering right on the edge of total bankruptcy. Okay, now let's pivot sharply. The year is 1901. This year brings a massive geopolitical earthquake that changes the map of North America forever, and it shifts the balance of power quite literally overnight. Down in the coastal plains of Texas, the legendary Spindletop oil boom erupts. We're talking a monstrous geyser of black sludge shooting hundreds of feet into the sky. The age of oil has officially arrived, and suddenly, Texas realizes it's sitting on the largest liquid gold mine on Earth. The contrast here is just staggering. Practically overnight, Texas transforms from being the poorest, most isolated western state in the Confederacy into the wealthiest entity on the entire continent. They've got their own vast territory, a history as an independent republic, and now unimaginable financial power. Now, you can probably guess what happens next, right? The politicians in Richmond are absolutely desperate to save their dying government from complete collapse. So they immediately move to seize and tax this incredible new wealth. To them, Texas oil is the absolute last lifeline to prop up their bankrupt system. But Texas has always been a bit different. Faced with this sudden federal overreach from Richmond, Texas invokes the exact same doctrine upon which the Confederacy itself was founded. It is the ultimate historical irony. They flat out refuse to let their hyper-modern wealth be used to prop up a failing, backward agrarian system. This triggers a historic final betrayal. Texas officially secedes. They close their borders, raise the Lone Star flag, and completely break away from the agrarian South to become their very own hyper-modern petrostate. It's crazy when you think about it. The exact mechanism that created the South is what ultimately destroys it. Deprived of that Texas oil money, the remaining Southern coalition completely shatters into a volatile, balkanized landscape. What we are left with is just a cluster of fractured, impoverished states squabbling among themselves, completely vulnerable to the outside world. So as we look out at the horizon heading into the 20th century, the conclusion becomes pretty clear. The Civil War victory in the 1860s was never really a destination. It was just a detour leading directly to an inevitable, self-inflicted collapse, leaving a fractured continent right as the dark clouds of the First Global War start to gather. All of this data leaves us with a genuinely haunting question about the geopolitical fallout of this alternate reality. And hey, if you want to unlock more hidden truths and deep dives into the mechanics of history just like this, make sure to subscribe to this explainer right now so we can keep exploring together. So I'll leave you with this. Which state would have been the next to fall? And would the North have eventually reclaimed its lost territory? Let me know your theories in the comments below because I genuinely read and reply to every single one.